Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Uh, how are you guys?
Yeah, how is everyone? Like,
Just giving a little space for the people who have more to say.
yeah,
I think that's good. Welcome back to Good Idea Interesting, everybody. It's one of the podcasts where Isaiah and myself we explore different topics, try to give our expertise, and just generally prepare you for the world, sort of emotionally, spiritually, and philosophically. So today we have a pretty amazing topic and presentation prepared for you guys. I'm really, really excited. Um, yeah,
yeah, this one, we explore ideas, right? And ideas also have ideas of their own sometimes, you know. So, um, and sometimes you really have to do your research, um, to present ideas in the best way, to give those ideas their best foot forward, and the ideas of the ideas. So today we are actually discussing futuristic predictions. We've entitled this presentation Building the Worlds of the Future. Um, so we're going to basically, there's so much talk on futures, right? On what's going to happen, basically. I think it's on everyone's mind. I think it's super prevalent, um, and important. Um, And these are going to be big questions and big answers that we're both asking and answering. So let's let's dive in,
no
I think.
further ado. Let's get into this. Well,
Yeah.
let's step into the future today. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's three primary pillars of the future. They're easy enough to understand, but hard to master. So let's try jumping into the just outline. Okay, so number one, we've got transportation, and there he came back. So this is one of the first categories. It's followed only by the second category. That is the elements. So you think you might know a lot about the elements. You think you might know about the table of the elements. You think you might know about the spiritual folk understanding of the elements,
Mm,
four, maybe five, maybe six or seven. But the elements are going to play a huge, huge role in the future. And if
exactly.
you don't think that they are, you got another thing coming.
Yep.
Um, and then our third topic, economy. So this is basically explains itself. That's going to happen in the future, and um, it's something we will need to be discussing. It'll look like the past. It'll look like something we've never seen before. It'll be a mix. So, um,
Yeah,
let's
so I mean it's really important. I mean, beautifully put, Jacob, and I think that when we're talking about the future, right? It's like if you're talking about a house, you can't talk about a house without talking about its foundation. Um, the cement, the dirt, the land that goes into it, or below it in this case, in a house context. But when we're talking about the future, we need to talk about the foundation. And these are the primary pillars, foundational pillars of the future. So it sort of sets the stage.
and believe you me, the house of the future that we build today will be completely furnished with amazing amenities and beautiful trims. But the place we have to start still, nonetheless, is the foundation. So just be patient. If you are someone who loves a shiny faucet or a beautifully scalloped edge to a door frame, uh, that's all gonna happen. But first, we need to worry about the concrete and
Exactly.
rebar.
Yep. Exactly.
So should we get moving with the transportation section?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, Isaiah's really prepared this part of the presentation, so I'm gonna let him sort of lead the way here, but I'll chime in. Okay.
Yeah. So transportation, there's various images here. You will want to sort of let these images sink in. Transportation is defined as the way that something goes to from like one place to a different like geographical location. So just foundational, speaking of foundation, the foundation of transportation is that sort of definition. Transportation has evolved an unbelievable amount. If you direct your attention to the horse and carriage, um, there's a little human here. These ways, these modes of transportation are actually um, they're actually going to come back. So the something that a lot of people don't really realize or think about is that the the this was one of the first modes of transportation, right? We now have cars and buses and trains and planes.
Right.
But the reason, the first things first, right? So the wheel and the carriage and the horse and carriage um, are actually going to come back. They're first because they're the most efficient and the most reliable. And that is why animal scientists are projected to be the leading pioneers in transportation theory and development.
Now, this was an insight that when you shared this with me in the development of this episode, this really blew me away because it's so elegant, so simple, so obvious, and yet it eludes so many of us. And I mean, the diagram essentially explains itself in this case. These animals have been experimenting for millions, hundreds of millions of years to protect um uh, to protect themselves and to develop methods of transport. And you're so right in that. Why would we count them out in the future? It's as if we expect them to stop doing that. But
It's
that, I don't think that'll happen. I think we can expect it could be tomorrow that the latest animal makes an incredible discovery.
unbelievably well put. Animals have been doing this for longer than we have. Therefore, we need to trust that. And luckily, there is a faction of scientists, animal scientists, that are really getting into the nitty-gritty of this research. Things like leading, right? Thickness, upper elements, wing elements, upper, lower, trailing. So
And this is something that we should say the human brain just isn't even equipped to understand some of this stuff. And that's why, I mean, when you were even listing things in the diagram, my mind went completely blank, and I started to feel thirsty. A feeling of salt sort of overwhelmed my throat, and that's a natural response for most people encountering that information. It's just it's called the salt reflex, and it's one of the reasons why animals have been able to be suited to this research when it can be so difficult for people.
absolutely, yes. This is very high level thinking, which is and honestly something that no one understands, which is exactly why we need to explain it and to try to explain it and to succeed.
And
Another,
ultimately to leave it up to the animals.
yes, to leave it up to the animals because we if we don't want to get too much into comparisons, but animal-based transportation modes are better than wing theory. So if you direct your attention to this slide, right, we've developed so many ideas about wing theory, leading, thickness, upper, etc. but at the end of the day, horse and carriage, horse-based or just pure bird-based transportation is going to achieve it's going to win out, essentially. Another faction, and this is actually a really burgeoning theory within us and some other groups, is, this idea of increase or decrease. Will transportation increase or decrease? Will transportation itself, will movement increase or decrease? And actually, because if you think about the stock market, there's ebbs and flows, right? There's ebbs and flows. There's peaks and valleys with that. We have been on a huge, throughout time, upswing of transportation, right? People are moving all the time. Cars, planes, boats, ships, trains, all these elements. But that is a bubble that is about to burst. I don't know. We don't know when, but it will happen. So sedentary
Yeah,
is
it's said by some leading rogue economists that that movement is a confidence game, essentially, and that it's a thing that might not be around forever, which is hard to believe because you're right. The bubble we've been riding has been puffing up for so long,
yeah.
but it could be going like that as people decide that they would like to um, just sit still for longer.
Yeah, for longer. And you'll see, chairs, chair manufacturers are sort of on the rise, but it's not picking up yet. So invest in chairs and sedentary objects because it's on a huge swing. Another thing, and we've got a lot to cover, so I do want to move on. And I'll tell you when to move to the next slide. But there's
Certainly.
we've got sort of a big reveal here. In the future, there will be, and you can flip, car societies. So, like, first of all, wow.
Yeah, yeah.
First of all, let this sink in. The writing's on the wall, people. Automated self-driving cars, increased technologies, AI. The writing's on the wall, and it might be a shock to hear. Right now, there are more questions than answers, and it does seem a little bit dire. And we don't know if car societies will be benevolent. We don't know if they will seek to help us or help us move. But once they continue to develop and get smarter and more independent, they will start to form their own societies.
I think it's important for us to just walk somebody through how this will happen because it can feel like an inevitability to us as we've seen the research, but I just want to make sure that we're exploring the process for the listeners where self-driving cars, this is a thing that's happening right now.
Mhm.
And so it's not so hard to imagine pretty soon in the future, a car is going to be driving itself, not just to drive a person around, but that person will be busy. They'll be at home deciding to sit still in this new world that we're thinking about, right? And
Yep.
then, but then, so the car is going to go out and run an errand where it fills itself up with gas, right? And so it's only a matter of time before car 100 cars or 1,000 cars go out to fill themselves up with gas and then suddenly realize, hey, I'm out and I might as well see a movie, right? And drive-in theaters are few and far between, but they're not non-existent. They happen. They're still around, and it's some seasonal events in certain city parks and stuff like that. This is still an experience you can have if you're dedicated to preserving that time in history. And so a car will be able to go to a drive-in movie theater, and this could be an eerie experience for movie lovers. They might have a bit of popcorn and have the little speaker box inside their car snuggled up with a loved one, and they might be thinking about sneaking a kiss, right? But they want to look side to side to make sure there are no voyeurs watching them. And, they'll be delighted, but also shocked and perhaps on another level appalled to find that they're in a completely full drive-in movie theater, but they're the only people there because the rest of the audience will be our cars that will are watching their own movies just for their own edification. The movie sets off a huge chain reaction of cars becoming more educated about entertainment, which is one of the foundational pillars of any meaningful society. And then from there you're on a rocket ship that can't stop. Is that correct? Am I right in saying that?
I mean, you're spot on. You're more than spot on. And actually, the movie component is going to be, as you said, a huge catalyst. I mean, they're going to start to see, romantic involvements. They're seeing societies in the movies. So what do you think they're going to do? Oh, I don't want to form my own society? No, they're going to see movies that with various societies, and they're going to say, you know what? I want to experience love in Central Park. I want to experience love in the sunny streets of my own Los Angeles,
Right.
right?
And it's also, we should say, this is a big reason why we're big supporters of the positive society movement in cinemas. There are a lot of filmmakers. We're really interested in contributing money to some nonprofits that are trying to boost positive representation of societies to teach these vehicles um, just new principles as they sort of start to form their societies. We don't
Right.
have the money to we don't have any of the money at the moment to contribute that, but it's something we're definitely thinking about. So
Absolutely. And with this awareness and with this, inevitability, like if you open your eyes, if you're looking at the wall, you see the writing on it, we can have an impact on these societies. And like you said, by imploring your directors, friends that are interested in screenwriting and, emailing still has a big impact on film screen directors and that just imploring like please positive society structures. um yeah, so that's sort of a wrap on transportation. We're seeing a lot, to sum it up, animal scientists going to be play a huge role, or sort of going to be reverting back to animal forward transportation, and then basically from there a retraction from transportation at all, um, with motionless theory, which is emerging, and then this car society thing is going to be really interesting.
yeah, so I think it's time for us to talk about elements.
Let's do it.
Let's go. Wow, there's something so pleasing about these images. And just knowing that whenever I look on these images, I'm looking at representations of the things that make up everything. It's something as intimate as my hand, or as far away as a foreign country like Canada. Um,
Mhm.
and it's just humbling. It's beautiful. It's like looking at the globe from outer space in a way.
Absolutely. I think elements always have and always will have a special place in our hearts because if you think about the natural world, if you think about the world, you're thinking about elements, right? um and so fire, ice, green, trees, dirt, um wind, breath, in that way. um these are these are sort of our parents in a way,
Hmm.
Mother Earth, Mother Fire, Mother Wind, Mother
Wow.
Water.
I've never thought about it that way. That's crazy.
Yeah, yeah. So there's sort of one looming concern. Um, and we don't really know if it's a concern yet, but it's this idea of, you know, with sort of honestly, a rejection of climate care, with more things on the rise, such as um, littering.
Mm,
Littering groups are actually coming back. Um, sort of turning away from values that are, geared towards sustaining the elements. What are we gonna see? What do you think is gonna happen, listeners? So
I have a little idea.
talk to us. This is big.
I'm circling it right now.
This is really big.
Element alliances. Mm, is that accurate?
Yes. Yes. Element alliances. I feel like I want to hear your thoughts because I know it's something that we are really concerned about.
Yeah, I think we we all know the rules of the game as they stand right now. We all know the way that hydrogen and oxygen get together. It seems fair, it seems equitable. It's what we expect, and it gives us what we need, right?
Mhm.
But these contracts between the elements are constantly being renegotiated. How many of them want to attach to each other to make what? Who stays away from whom? And even what their properties are, like a metal taste or a certain bounciness. Um, but
Mm.
these things could shift and change in the future, and we could see essentially voting blocks of powerfully aligned elements, elements who have similar origins and might have grown up together or developed alongside each other in certain big events, like stars. Then they may start to make decisions that don't completely align with our human interests, um, and it could really change the rules of everything. And in a way, that's beautiful, right? Um,
Right.
because elements and how, I'm imagining the new diagrams and the new types of drawings that somebody could be looking at on a page like this in a presentation made in the future under different element alliances. And they are outside of my comprehension, but beautiful beyond belief, to be sure. So there's something amazing and tempting, tantalizing even about living in that world. It would be an exciting adventure, to be sure, but it's something where we need to get our respect in order. Essentially, we need to form our own, you know
Community
alliances
community
of
group.
community groups of respecting the elements. So yeah, yeah,
And and teach, I don't want to say teaching them because the elements have taught us so much. They've taught us so much, basically all of anatomy, biology, science, scientists have learned everything that we have learned from the elements in one way or another, right? Observing nature, doing experiments, doing um, research, doing, becoming closer to nature. And so in that way, in some ways, we have shown, some factions have shown great, mutually beneficial relationships to nature and to the elements, in that way. But the elements, so I guess we might have some influence, reciprocal influence on the elements in that way to guide them towards more fruitful alliances. You know, fire and water, really interesting stuff. that stuff like steam, we could have more, we could be looking at way more steam
Yeah, and
in,
even steam that could feel different to the
yeah.
touch, or a completely new byproduct of fire and water getting together. They've been working in a professional capacity for so long, but I feel like a real intimacy has developed between them. Partially to do with human involvement. So, you know, this is an exciting frontier. The things we're worried about mostly are earth elements, things like chromium, um, tungsten, things you're finding in the ground, just like carbon and even helium that we seem totally hell bent on depleting. You
Mhm.
know, these elements, um, they're not as big as fire and water. They're more indie elements, but they have just an incredible capacity to change our world. So we need to be careful.
We do. Yeah. So look out for that. Look at, I mean, look in your day-to-day life, just every day, like think about element alliances and how you can impact those and foster fruitful ones and have respect for those co-creations that they're making.
Yep. So should we
Cool.
move on?
Absolutely.
Let's see. There we go. Okay, we're moving on to the economy. Okay, there's a lot to talk about here.
Yeah.
Economy, there's a way the economy seems to be going right now that I believe is a complete red herring, a total misnomer to the name of the future. And I just can't wait to dispense with all the junk science that I've been hearing out there in the world. Um, so if you think about it, we're sort of getting into a money realm of total fantasy at the moment, right?
Mm.
We're sort of cartoonifying our money. We're decentralizing it. We're decentralizing it from our own pockets to put it in the pockets of others, put it in the pockets of the great wide world of the internet.
Mhm.
Um, and you know, money has be taken on qualities that make it so much more like a picture, or something that can be downloaded or shared in a text message. And a lot of people are uncomfortable with that. They're feeling the effect on their pocketbook because they can't stuff that thing full of photos. They need to keep it slim, and they need to keep the denominations of the bills reasonable. They need to carry, probably never carry $100 bill around just casually unless you got a present.
That's
Uh,
actually a big thing that I want to just emphasize is that when you don't don't do that because a lot of a lot of times what will happen is like maybe like your coworker or coworkers will ask you for like your wallet and like maybe you'll feel bad or like pressured to give it to them and because like they're buying like chips and they offered to like buy you chips but like if you only have 100 and so they'll like sort of take your wallet and give like the month like they will take like they'll just take like the $100 bill and um yeah so
Yeah,
anyway we don't
well,
recommend.
no, you're speaking with the voice of the common man right now. There's a lot of concern around these things in the modern economy, and these things are getting harder to figure out with the advent of things like server farms and data management. A lot of people are, they are obsessing over sort of new religions of money, trying
Mm.
to sort of merge self and money, trying to make their bodies themselves into money, and they're developing identities around money that a lot of psychologists say are becoming unhealthy, even if they're insanely rich. Um,
Mm,
so this is a problem right now that I think has a definitive expiration date based on my future research. What I want to say is toward the bottom right of this very slide, I'm talking about new frontiers of reality. And I want to talk about this in a very specific way, which is the currencies of folk art.
mm,
Folk art from all different cultures is incredibly valuable, and it can be made by any normal person who's devoted to an artisanal craft. It can
mhm,
take almost any form, it can reflect any part of daily life. These can be, beautiful crafts and monuments to the inner inspiration of normal people who, in the joy excess of life, simply find a moment here or there to carve a beautiful thing that exists entirely for itself. However, folk art can also have a practical functionality. Like if you like this wooden ship, if you want to get something from one side of the bath to the other, this could be a perfect way
mm,
to charter something totally functional. So, folk art has so many different uses. It's a utility, it's an art, it's an expression of a clear investment in time and value, and I feel that we'll see much more bartering and an incredibly amount higher of value of this stuff. And I would just want to give a word of the wise of the listeners is that some of this stuff is available right now. It's something that you can get easily. It's on eBay.
mhm.
It's on there's some of it even still on Etsy.
Yeah,
Um,
I
and
think.
you could even spot if you want to get into the scene, if you want to go really hard on this stuff, you can get into the Instagram of it. And you can sort of take we need to be taking all of us need to be taking radical responsibility for our algorithms. We need to be looking at the algorithm and what things are showing, what these platforms are showing us, and we need to understand intimately that that's a reflection of ourselves and our desires, and we need to understand how to steer that so that we can be in conversation, a sort of dialectical self-making with these algorithms, um, to sort of establish that you want to be seeing as much folk art as you possibly can, because this is going to it's going to put you in a very candy market position to invest in really cool money making ideas of the future. But it won't even be money, because at this point it'll be folk art. We'll probably have a different word for that sort of thing, like dolfu. So I can't express this enough. I know I've been very excitable talking about this, and I want to leave it here. And I want everybody to just stew it over in their mind. And I'm just going to move on to my last pillar of talking about the economy, if that's okay.
Absolutely. Well put. Well said.
So multi-level marketing is a really it's just an extremely powerful method for unfolding and activating success in your life and the lives of others. Um, this is a sort of model of business and making money and influencing people that is it's taken a strong influence from the triangle.
Mm,
So the triangle is one of the most durable shapes in a 2D space.
mhm,
All tests conducted in the second dimension have concluded very firmly that the triangle has a sort of angular uh, density and structural integrity that leads it to a position of extreme strength. So any side that you want to attack a multi-level marketing business from, those that side will be angularly reinforced from all sides by its triangular shape. So
yep.
ha- good luck, buddy. Basically, if you want to attack the point, you might poke yourself. If you want to attack the side, I don't think that's going to go well for you. And
If you want to get in the middle, these are actually made up of smaller triangles, right? If we think about the triangular form, look at this. every triangle is made up of a series of different triangles. And I was talking, it's funny, I was talking to a friend about this, and we were debating, what's the strongest shape. Um, and he said a square. And I said, I was arguing triangle, of course, because I'm rooted in that research and that, you know, that truth, that science. And I said, well, cut a cut a square in half. What do you get?
Wow.
Two triangles. Anyways, keep going.
I think
Oh,
a lot of people get intimidated because there's just a little bit extra to remember with these types of businesses where if you want to figure out the area of one of these businesses, you have to it's so simple, but it's just so easy to forget is you take the area, right? You calculate it as if you're getting the area of a rectangular square shaped thing and then you divide it in half.
yep.
And it's really that is just a little pitfall that a lot of people forget constantly, even on tests and evaluations. When they're so confident they've read the material, they just forget to divide it in half because they're
Yep.
just the muscle memory is there from taking the area of square shaped businesses and limited liability corporations, different ventures, even independent contractors. Basically erect their quote unquote businesses in the shape of a square, even though they're essentially contractors, right?
Hmm.
And so, but don't let the math get in your way here. This is an extremely powerful um, vehicle to sort of socially transform your community, to sell a lot of things to your friends, to get them involved in selling things back to you. Um,
Yep.
some of the same exact stuff. And so this will just greatly increase the amount of commodities in your life. And there is just such a huge market here for somebody that's going to figure out how to bridge the gap between a multi-level marketing business and a folk art currency. Um, and
Mm.
I just in my mind they meet and they bounce off each other, but somebody's going to see them you beautifully folding in and touching like two triangles forming a square that then becomes its own um, triangle. So
Yep.
yeah, and I don't want to get too technical here for the listeners, and I
Don't want to get too
apologize.
technical, but at the core here, we are seeing something that is greater than the sum of its parts. So this is a model that's just so strong, both in how it works, like the results that it breeds, but also the just like the social invigoration. Like if you're looking for a sense of community, right? Like this has other aspects where it applies. Like if you're looking for a sense of community, loneliness is on the rise right now. Um,
And no one knows why.
and no one knows why. No one can even begin to think about why. Well, we don't know why, but we know things that can remedy this. And this multi-level marketing element is a way of both making money and forming really valuable community. Um, so
It's true.
I'm gonna be seeing a lot of that going forward.
Wow. Well, Isaiah, I think we've done an amazing job. That sort of concludes the pillar section of our presentation. Um, so we've done it: transportation, the elements, and economy. These are sort of the basics that are going to orient you towards the vision of the future that we're selling you here. um, but don't buy just yet because you need to see some of the extra features. um, so let's click on. You're gonna want to know what happens, right? Events of the future.
Events of the future. Wow. Where where to begin? Where to where where do we begin?
Well, I think we're gonna start close to home. For you and me, the world of podcasts is both our oyster and our home world.
Mhm.
And yes, we love to get on an interstellar frigate and, you know, blast off from the shipyard zone into quadrant 4 to broadcast our little show. But, you know, fundamentally, the world of podcasting, getting into the weeds of it, knowing about ourselves and others is why we do this. So our predictions here are pretty, you know, hemmed in close to the world of podcasting and entertainment, but it's still going to be exciting for the listeners.
Well put.
Yeah. So let's get right into it. We're going to see a podcast late night switcheroo. Isaiah, I know you wanted to kind of, you know, drill this down into our listeners' brains.
Yeah, this one hits close to home, meaning that it's basically right in our front yards at this point. But being so intimately close with the podcast space, um, this is this is maybe going to have this is maybe going to have an unbelievably huge effect on the entertainment dimension and just information dimension. So this is the heading here is a podcast late night switcheroo. Basically, we are seeing countless examples of this in the culture right now. Podcasts are on the rise, and we are seeing, you know, take some just one example, Conan, right? Conan O'Brien, you know, used to be a talk show host late night, um, and you know, brilliant body of work. We're actually huge fans of Conan, but when he was in the late night space, I could tell that he hadn't really reached his like truest form. I don't know what your impression of that was, but seeing him, he just looked out of his element a little bit, and you
He was holding
tell
something back.
he's holding something back, and he wasn't able to do some of the same stuff that you can do with this new paradigm, which is the podcasting framework. So we saw a shift. I mean, these images are just to me so inspiring. I've got a couple of these on my wall. Um, with late night stuff, I don't know, when I watch late night stuff, I sort of just I'm always there's always just something missing. I'm always like in my usually I feel it sort of in my chest. It's like a tightness, and it's like ow. I I feel like they aren't doing the right thing, or they're not speaking, you know, where are the headphones?
Yeah, yeah.
SM7B mic, where's the Shure, you know? I don't know. It's an emotional topic for me, so I don't know if I'm making a lot of sense, but when Conan made that switch, it just felt right, and um I think we're gonna be seeing a lot more of that. I don't know if you have any thoughts in particular on this dynamic.
I mean, I just want to sketch out the big ideas of this theory you've developed, which I think is brilliant, which is that late night hosts will become podcast hosts, and that podcast hosts will become late night hosts. Um, and I think that's essentially true. You know, we've talked about sort of the big example of a crossover, a late night crossover into podcasting. But I think, you know, we should note that the podcaster to late night host switcheroo is sort of already happening as we see, you know, new forms of computerized media, you know, taking hold of audiences everywhere and enthralling them with entertainment thrills that they haven't seen the likes of before, held handheld in their own pockets and fingers. This is a way for the new generation of watchers, consumers, viewers, and audiences to see the world through the screen. And some of the people they're going to, these podcasters, right, have gotten big on these little they were once tiny platforms, but they've risen in estimation with the breakout stars of, I'm thinking of people, people like some of these streamers, some of these podcasters like Ludwig. These are essentially becoming the late night hosts of now, because people are tuning into them for a similar function, a comfort at the end of the day, a feeling of a familiar media personality. We more in this old world. Oh, where did Johnny Carson go? Oh my gosh, where did little baby Ronnie Howard go? Well, I have the answer for you, brutal as it may be. Little Ronnie Howard grew up to direct films, okay? And Johnny Carson has passed away many years now. But I'll tell you who is around is the people you watch on Twitch stream. They're coming to your TV, they're becoming your comfort person, and that is exactly the same. So I'm just saying that this phenomenon works in reverse as well as in forwards. And I think what you've been saying here is beautiful.
Thank you.
So let's move on to more predictions. Yeah.
Yep, let's do it.
Well, okay. Well, this is a big thing. We're forecasting the future of the show. So right now, I just want everybody to take a good look, because this is what our Instagram page looks like at the most recent date of its capturing, which is the 3 posts so far. Big number 3. It's sort of a trinity.
Yep,
Um,
triangular.
and but
We're,
this
we're really,
this is going to become a franchise of posts. This is not going to end here, right?
yep, no.
Yeah, and I'm really excited about this. So, we wanted to mock up what this might look like in an ideal phase, sort of at an end state of the future, or just a snapshot in time.
Just like what we're building towards, right? Like
Yeah,
we started this podcast somewhat recently, and it's just the momentum and the growth. I feel it, and we've got big ideas. We've got really big ideas, some that are hard to swallow, some that are even harder to chew on. Um, and so sort of, yeah, ideal phase modeling is something that we're doing for this show, and we want to loop the listenership in on this. Um, so yeah, let's
so we're looking at this image, and what this is going to look like in the future is quite different. We are aiming for at least 80 followers,
yeah.
and we want to have 5 posts up on the Instagram. But this is sort of, we're including this with another extra prediction for the future, which is that they will be called Pogons in the future.
Yeah,
Um,
posts are not they're not going to be called posts anymore. I mean, this is like within the 5-10-10 year model, but they will be called pogons, which um, just way more provocative, um, way just connotation wise. It's you're thinking more when you're thinking that is a pigeon. It's more letters. He still starts, still incorporates some of the same letters, but
right. There's a nod to the past in the word.
yeah, absolutely. But yeah, and we're gonna be looking at at least 2 more. Yeah, it's what we're working towards.
Yeah. So stay tuned. I think it's gonna happen. Okay. And this is a personal thing, but it's true. We're working on new personalities. We're developing them for the future. Um, and it's gonna happen. So I think you're up first, Isaiah, and just left for you to speak on this.
Yeah, so we're working on brand new hosts personalities. My approach is absolutely going to be muscle oriented, muscle focused. Um, we talk about personalities and how people change. And in this case, you might be thinking, oh, so you're just going to try to get really jacked. No. Well, yes, I am, but I'm more talking about a embodiment of a personality, right? My personality will be embodied with a muscular focus. That is what my personality will be, right? These images of swollen, bulging, pulsing veins, right? Activity flowing, and just huge, huge stuff. That's going to be going on at both at a physical and interpersonal level for me. So we're talking about peak performances, muscular fusion at all levels. Gonna be substituting a lot of water for protein powder, like more scooping, instead of just, drinking your normal like Coca-Cola or root beer or lemonade or orange juice. It's going to be more so based on scooping of, powder, much more powder, much more gaining, um, you know, big, just thinking big, right? Thinking bulky and big. And that's gonna have huge effects. um, so that's sort of where I'm going with all of it.
I think it's beautifully put. Um, I feel like I'm starting to notice ways that you are stronger and more full of activity lately. I feel like it's coming through your personality before you're starting to look, really swollenly huge. But I have no doubt that that's coming for you in the future because I think what a lot of these publications, a lot of these figures, what they say about how to get as huge as them is that it starts, it has so little to do with actually the gym or
Yeah.
anything that you eat. And it has a lot to do with, you know, how you feel and the thoughts you think.
Yep.
So, I'm working as well towards a new identity. I feel like a lot of cutting edge research has influenced me profoundly in the past few years. And this is research that sort of runs the gamut and spreads over many disciplines. So I'm looking to become sort of way more childlike in the future, in the sense of an enduring sweetness and innocence, but also in sort of like an ultimate power, neuroplasticity way where I'm maintaining ultimate levels of like potential
Mhm.
gains in my ability to think and react. So we see, I've tried to draw this up pretty clearly, which is that there's a lot of neuro neuro plastic realities inside of our dendrites, neurons, things of that nature inside of the brain,
Yeah.
and these things can harden over time, but with new supplements and routines, working against aging and lazy thinking, we can sort of maintain what has been called a neoplastical state of affairs. So I think this ultimately enables the mind to better grok ideas of enlightenment and transcendence, which is sort of ultimately where this is leading. I want to be, as an older man, a totally enlightened, um, you know, child, essentially. So that's all I have on that. And
Yeah,
uh,
I do want to say on this, like, from my conversations with you, I know how passionate you are on this. And it's not about it's not about like, this isn't like, oh, I want to like learn new things. This is actually, a lot of it is related to unlearning almost everything, in the sense that children are incredibly dependent. And that actually gives them their strength, their ability to teach us or a parent how to communicate, how to caretake, how to really give. Um, more children, they say that, with more children in the more world, there's more smiling, more peace, more smiling.
Yeah, and I don't want to be too lofty about this. I want to say on a practical level, what I'm trying to do is unlearn information to free up the neuroplastic centers of my brain so that I can sort of better think about meditative matters like chakras. And at the same time, I will be becoming more dependent on the people around me to, make decisions for me about my day, like clothing,
Mhm.
feeding, um, and a lot of caretaking. But I think what was big for me about this was realizing that as as I sort of draw down my involvement in outer selfhood and adult matters, I won't feel embarrassment as much about being dependent because um, my reality will be completely deformed to resemble that of a child who feels surely no guilt for being dependent on adults.
Absolutely. Exciting.
Cool. Well, we're getting to our conclusion now. Um, it's been a wonderful ride. I'm sure the listeners have enjoyed this immensely. I know I have.
Yeah, and learned a lot. I mean, they say that teaching is one of the best ways to learn. Um, I feel simultaneously like a wise old man and a tiny baby.
Yeah, I basically didn't know any of this stuff before I started teaching it. So
Yeah, yeah,
right now, like earlier today. So
yeah, we're not through exploring. We try to teach the unteachable, even to ourselves. Um, and yeah, yeah, conclusionary takeaways. Let's talk about
yeah,
this.
let's do it. Oh, right. So, I mean, this is just a fundamental acknowledgement that all of our predictions, they have a dark and a light aspect.
Mhm,
And we're not making predictions about the dark or light um, ramifications of what will happen. We're just exploring possibility.
mhm,
So it's up to each of us. Whether the littering gangs that Isaiah was talking about, whether that
mhm.
will be ultimately a force for good or bad, is up to them, is up to us, is up to you.
Yeah, it's up to the listeners.
Yeah.
Uh,
So the future will be full of beings. It's not going to end anytime soon.
it's
Eh,
I mean, beings are beings be. I think that's a quote from that's a quote.
Donaldson.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's Donaldson and his teacher. Um,
Well, that's all we got to say about that. Closing remarks. Well, yeah, I mean, do you have anything here?
I mean, the one thing is like for for everyone out there, for the listenership, um, you know, when you're when you're doing anything, it's almost best to think about the future when you're doing anything. So this is sort of like, don't worry about the past for sure, but definitely don't stay in the present. And that's something that I think to build the futures that we want, we need to always be existing mind, mentally and physically in the future, um, to create these worlds. So, you know, don't worry about the past. Definitely do not stay in the present. And I think that'll be a good guiding light.
Yeah, it's and just to piggyback off of that, when this future arrives, and I'm confident it will, I do not want to be making a podcast about how right I was on this podcast. I want to be making another podcast about the future, right?
Yeah. exactly.
Great. So moving on to closing thoughts. Um, I think my closing thoughts mostly are that, this research is constantly evolving.
Mm.
There's an intense redeployment of methods being used again and again to measure data. And through that, we're doing essentially what could be called a scientific inquiry.
Absolutely. Well put. Closing thought for me is sort of an approach of humility. I feel an incredible sense of gratitude to be able to serve and to synthesize and to research and to synthesize ideas. I've always said, when I was growing up, I remember this distinctly. People always, teachers, parents, or colleagues, peers would say, what do you want to be when you grow up? Right? That's a classic question. It also addresses the future, and what I always was focused on, and just the thing that came to mind at every age, whether I was in, elementary school, kindergarten, it's a high school, my answer was always ideas.
Hmm.
What do you want to be when you grow up? Ideas. And I think I said that it was an instinct, and I don't even know if I knew what it meant, but it's really coming to fruition now where I just feel blessed to be able to synthesize ideas, to embody ideas, to communicate ideas to the listenership. Um, and yeah, thank you for being my co-captain.
It's my honor. So last things last, closing music,
Yeah,
15
yeah.
to 20 seconds each, an original song. How you feel about that?
I'm so excited. I've been, this is gonna be completely improvised. I've been working on it for weeks, but it's going to be improvised, obviously, in the moment. So, should I go first? I thought,
Take it away. Take it away.
remember early last week when I made the joke. We joked about like, oh, am I gonna go first? Jacob said, you bet you will. And I said, oh, so here we are. Closing music. Okay. This song is called Futuristic Possibility Realms, ideas. A breath, a single breath, awakens you to the world of the future. A breath, a single breath, awakens you to the world of the future. Ideas, ideas. They come to you without a sight to do. Forget the to-do list because ideas are coming to you.
That was great. It was beautiful.
So much, yeah. Sort of the gotta work on the vocals, the vocal cords, but um yeah, I feel very connected to that spirit. So thanks for that opportunity. Excited for yours.
This one's called The Future is a Place Inside Your Heart.
Beautiful.
The future is a place inside your heart. It's a place where dreams and wishes start. The future is a child. The future is a bird. The future, the most beautiful song you heard. Oh, the future is a place inside your heart. And you and I are in love. So that's something I'm hoping to sing to my wife someday.
I I can't wait to, you know, to hear about that. That's just beautiful. I tear felt it. I felt a tear. So, all right, everyone, listenership. Thank you for joining us on another week. Um, good idea, interesting. Futuristic realms. Today we explored a lot, and so going to be a lot to sink your teeth and chew into. So, have a great week, and see you next week.
Bye, all.